What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another one. And today's going to be my last video on my pheasants. So, over the last almost a year now, I've had these pheasants up here behind me. I started out with 59 chicks, and I've been raising those up, and slowly throughout the last year, I've been using them to train my bird dog. If you've seen some of my other videos, you've seen a little bit of that. I didn't do as much of it as I really wanted to over the course of the last year, partially just because filming takes up a little bit of time, and I'd rather just work with my dog than fiddle with a lot of video. So that took up a lot less time than I thought it would originally. So I'm going to step in the barn here with the birds, give you a look at where we are now. So over the last year, basically, I started out with my 59 chicks, and I've dwindled down to what I have now is 5 roosters. 3 of them are here. The other 2 are hiding right now. They're not wanting to be out where they can be seen. So I started out with just a straight run, both hens and roosters, and they grew really fast, and it's been really fun to have these guys. But with the licensing that I'm operating under, the agreement is in that license that after 1 year, or till June 30th, I have the ability to raise and keep these birds for dog training purposes, and after that, I either have to renew my permit, or I have to have all my birds deceased or taken care of, sold, dead. I can't sell them live just for meat purposes. So that's where we're at now. It's June the 11th today, so I'm running up really close on the end of my permit. And these guys, I only have these 5 roosters. I'm probably gonna just straight out butcher them and put them in the freezer. I think it would be also a good time to kind of talk about what I've undergone over the last year. Just the differences in raising pheasants over basically any other fowl that I've ever raised before. I've had ducks, I've had geese, I've had chickens, all through childhood, but these pheasants are a completely different ball game. Even as chicks, they're pretty aggressive. I watched some of those guys drag their siblings around their pen when they were small, just because they thought their toe looked like something that was food. I actually, throughout this entire process, I've lost more birds to cannibalism or just fights than I have to any kind of predation. I've not lost a single bird to predation or any kind of care or like disease, something that can be prevented on my end. These birds really are wild. They're game birds. They're not going to be tame like your chickens or your geese that are going to follow you around. You can see that even right now when I'm in here, these birds have been here with me, like I said, for a year now, and they're as far away from me as they can get, which is great because that's what their purpose is. I was to use them for training my bird dog and to get that realistic feeling. And like in my area of Missouri, we don't have wild pheasants. In northern Missouri they do, but in the south central portion of Missouri, they just don't exist. So to have that authentic feeling of going out, taking my bird dog to like point, flush, and shoot pheasants, I mean, that's what you want, is a really wild game bird, and these pheasants have accomplished that thoroughly. They've 100% been that way. As soon as they could fly, they were flying. I mean, they exercise their wings truly. There's been times, I don't have it on video, but I've went to plant birds and they've flushed, and before I could get a shot at them, they're completely on the neighbors. I've had family members that have driven by and seen these things running down the side of the road, uh, like any wild bird you would in Iowa or Kansas or North or South Dakota. I mean, these are pretty authentic, pretty close to as real as you can get wild birds. As far as care goes, they're not much different than chicken, goose, ducks, whatever you're taking care of. Similar needs, requirements. They just take a little bit of different food. Whenever you're starting these birds, start them out on grower and start off with chick grower. I think it's something like 28% protein. And then you'll switch them to a game bird food after, I think it was close to 12 weeks. You may want to research that if you're doing this on your own, just because it's been a while. That's what I did, was research it, and I was able to figure out when the good switch off point was. After that period of time, switch them to a game bird food, which is 22% protein. It'd be the same thing that you would feed turkeys if you're going to raise turkeys, and they stay on that all the way up till end of life. So it's been really fun to take care of these things. It's completely different, completely something that I had never undertaken before. It's really cool to hear them cackle first thing in the morning instead of a rooster crowing. Well, it is a rooster crowing, it's just not your chicken rooster that's crowing. If you're going to do this as something that you want to pursue in the future, whether it be just like me for bird dog training purposes, or whether it be just as hobby, which I've fully considered in the time that I've kept these birds, just doing this for hobby. Like I said, it's really fun. It's different. It's not like your chickens and geese that everybody else has. It's something that, well, it's unique and individual. My advice, if you're going to, is you need to just find out what your regulations in your state are. In Missouri, they have to be inspected by the Department of Conservation. In other states, it's probably a DNR, whatever affiliate that is. And then you have to have your housing inspected before you can even obtain birds. You get a license in the mail from your commission here in Missouri, and then you're allowed to purchase birds, and you keep them until 1 year later, at the end of June. You, like I said, either renew your permit to keep the birds, or you cease holding any type of birds. Your field agent will contact you most likely. Whenever I did my inspection, that is what I was told, that I would be contacted sometime this month. They said usually after our turkey season, to either continue and come back and make sure that my facility is still operating in good condition, or they would come back to make sure that I didn't keep any birds, which is what I'm planning on doing. So if you're going to do this, step one, make sure that you are doing it legally. In Missouri, pheasants and bobwhite quail, I know chukar also, I know have to be licensed. If you keep something like a turnix quail, something that's not native, you can usually keep those without any type of licensing, and some other breeds of pheasant, I believe. But step one, check, make sure you're legal. Step two, make sure that you have a facility that can hold your birds. So I'm using literally my old chicken barn. I cleaned it completely out, swept it out, washed it out as best I could, just to keep the birds in. I knew I'd kept chickens in it in the past. The housing requirements in my state are not defined very well. Whenever I had my agent come out and talk to me, I had called our regional office first to see if there were regulations on the type of building that I needed. He said there were not, but when they came and did their inspection, they said what I had was perfectly fine. Just to give you like an insight on what I have, this barn is roughly, I believe it's 16 by 20, and then I have a single light bar in here, which is ran off of a 100-watt solar power panel to a inverter that's connected to a RV battery, and that has ran this system basically the entire time that I've had these birds. The only issue I ever really had as far as my solar power not working, I could probably add another panel just to keep some of the power moving in continually. Also, my charge controller burnt up on the original kit that I bought, so I added a new charge controller that was a little higher rating, and since then I've never had an issue. So the pheasants, as far as keeping them, pretty simple. You can probably kick them out. If you're wanting to try and just introduce these birds back into your native area by raising them and releasing them, don't plan on doing that. It's never gonna work. Although these birds, like I said, are pretty gamey, pretty well affiliated and act like game birds, they don't have the survival skills needed to thrive in the wild areas. If they did, or if they had the right skills, they would already be reintroduced. You're not the first person to think of it, most likely. Somebody else has considered it, but it doesn't work. Better yet, another way to think of it is, if they're not here already, there's likely a reason why they aren't naturally reproducing in your area. So if there was a good quality area to keep these birds in, they would most likely already be there. But for the most part, keeping pheasants have been a really enjoyable experience. I think that's all that I wanted to cover as far as keeping these. This will be the last pheasant update on my pheasant farm. I've considered getting other birds. I looked into maybe keeping some Coturnix quail. I may do that coming up. They're a little lower maintenance, smaller bird. These things are pretty flighty also, like I said earlier, so I would like something that I could possibly not have as much of an issue with them just jumping up or trying to get away from me at all costs whenever I come in the barn. I'd like something a little more tamer. So that's what I may be looking at in the future, or maybe not at all. I'm not quite completely made up my mind yet. If you have any questions as far as keeping pheasants, feel free to ask me in the comments. I'll try and answer the questions as best as possible. I know this video is a little different than what I usually do, but if you like it, would you give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you're into the bird keeping part of this. If not, feel free to come back any other time for anything else I'm making. In the meantime, hope you have a good one, and I'll see you in the next one.